As late as January, German finance specialists argued that Britain would likely end its traditional arrangements with the European Union by the end of this year, either under the terms of the World Trade Organization, the WTO, or with a rudimentary trade agreement. But a few months later, the likelihood of an end in horror increased, not least because of the corona crisis. Negotiations on future trade relations have made little progress, and the deadline for extending the transition period has passed. The most controversial questions remain unanswered. Provisions on a level playing field, fishing rights, and the role of the European Court of Justice, the ECJ. In addition, the EU remains concerned about the implementation of the Northern Ireland Protocol to avoid a hard border on the Irish island, without which there will be no agreement. We are entering a phase of more intensive personal negotiations. It is quite possible that the discussions will drag on into October, a tight schedule for the EU if it wants to ratify an agreement before the end of the year. In January, the specialists identified 4 scenarios for the end of the transition phase. A. No agreement, which means WTO. B. A limited agreement. C. A close cooperation. And D. An extension. Specialists still believe that the balance of risks towards one of the more negative scenarios, no deal or limited agreement, is skewed more than in January. For more positive results, the British government would have to break its commitments to voters, or the European Union would have to jeopardize the integrity of the internal market. And while an extension of the transition phase would no longer be possible, the British government has shown no interest in pursuing that option. But what about the other 2 scenarios? While it can be assumed that the British government and the EU would prefer an agreement, time is running out and it is still not clear how the main differences could be bridged. Failure is therefore a real possibility. The impact of COVID-19 has pushed Brexit far down the agenda in both the European Union and the UK. The specialists compare their updated probabilities for the 4 scenarios with their January assessment. They now estimate the likelihood that Britain will either expire its transitional agreement with the European Union by the end of the year with a pure trade agreement, or what others call a bare-bone agreement, or not at all. At this point, in their opinion, there is insufficient information to distinguish between these 2 negative results. Neither a WTO or a bare-bone agreement would be very good for either side. The key point, however, is that each of these 2 scenarios would put a strain on British trade with the EU, since there were no agreements on services and the reintroduction of customs and regulatory controls on goods. Therefore, both results at the time of the 2016 referendum would have been viewed as a hard Brexit scenario. In fact, for most people, leaving on WTO terms was not even on the radar at that time. So what does that mean for the British pound sterling? This is a more difficult decision than in January, but only because the pound has already fallen. From a fundamental perspective, there is little to be said for the British currency. Not only has the risk of a negative Brexit increased, the UK also has handled COVID-19 badly and is lagging far behind the rest of Europe. To be fair, it must also be said that the UK's government's fiscal response in recent months has been impressive, but it has also been the case elsewhere in Europe and the United States. Even from a low starting point, the outlook is therefore rather negative for the pound sterling. If you now want to know more about European politics from a German point of view, YouTube has chosen another of my videos right here for you in the end screen, right next to your chance to subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in my next video. Click and enjoy und viel Spaß!